you.
Now you can be all confused, John. What? Where am I? So here's what I get. Oh, I got two of these.
We're testing this and it seems to work.
Oh, stand up.
Must have thrown away the other one.
Stand up and do a skit.
Let's do what?
Do a skit. Let's have it.
I could sing the Illinois State song or something.
What is that?
What is it?
You know that?
You don't know the Illinois State song?
To the
do.
orange.
That's you.
Oh.
Yeah.
By thy waters gently flowing,
Illinois.
Illinois, Illinois. By thy prairies verdant growing, Illinois, Illinois. It is wafted on the breeze, and it's like blowing through the leafy trees, and its mellow tones are these, Illinois, Illinois. And its mellow tones are these, Illinois.
All right.
You're looking very spiffy today, by
Was
the way.
that recorded?
Yeah, we're gonna have to get an excerpt.
I love it.
Very,
Thank you.
very spiffy.
Doesn't that seem to be generally well known among the public?
I have heard that before, but,
My dad used
you
to
know,
sing
like
Yeah.
you heard, I'd be singing.
Wondrous story, Illinois, Illinois could be writ the nation's glory, Illinois, Illinois.
There's some colleges who actually do it.
Abraham Lincoln's name appears, Grant and Logan and our tears, Illinois.
it. You're gonna make me cry.
Yeah. And I rewrote the first.
I love Illinois.
No, it's in casinos, dice are rolling, Illinois, Illinois. In thy prairies, wheat is growing, Illinois, Illinois. You could bet on every score, paying taxes more and more. I am headed for the door, Illinois. Equal time for rebuttal.
Don't let the door hit your butt on the way out.
Can I get a copy of that video, please? That audio at least?
Got it.
Send it to my fan club. from the
Okay,
last year.
I have a question about this map. Why does Kane County have a dog at the top?
By what?
Why does it bend at the top?
Well, because we jut over there and we meet Cook County.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I see. You can blame that, I think, on a surveyor's error in like 1810.
O2 or something?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Huh.
if you go out there, dig them up, give them your peace of mind.
There you go.
I just needed to ask.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah,
does it
it
dive?
just-
Car
A little.
further.
Now,
Yeah, it just ships a little.
and
Yeah.
Mr. Shepro was there when it was recorded.
That
What
time,
was there during the time and all
Yeah.
that. And
when the county was created, it was created out of LaSalle County.
Oh,
Yeah, I think that's true.
which way is the South County?
And
So,
it was named for the Illinois senator who had died in Washington a month earlier.
Kane? So it has almost nothing.
Elias Ken Kane.
So he's not from Kane County, right?
But it was named after
No,
Citizen Kane.
And when he was around, I think the Potawatomi were from Kane County.
We could call it
He
Potawatomi
was from
County.
downstate. He was from, I mean, everybody was from downstate. If you look at the map,
So we can blame them.
yeah,
Coming up.
yeah, basically, they were mostly slaveholders in Kentucky who bought land across the Ohio River and moved
I got copies.
this
for
side of the
everybody.
river.
Want one? Yep.
Yeah.
Kent was the moving force behind the Illinois Statehood Convention that when we were admitted in 1818. But he was actually pro-slavery. But he told the pro-slavery convention, this is all documented, that if they presented a pro-slavery constitution, Congress would never approve it. So instead, being a clever lawyer, Illinois did not have, it outlawed slavery, and it had something called indentured servitude. So when some of the Kentucky landowners brought their entire operation north of the river, the slaves were offered indentured servitude contracts for 99 years.
Oh, my God. Oh, boy.
But anyway, and I'd say he was a Democrat, but in 1818, everybody was a Democrat. There was only one party, so. But anyway, so that's who we're named for.
So I have everything. but
We
that.
could change the name. We could say it was named for Will Kane.
I have copies of everything.
Excellent.
I knew it. All right, let's, it is now past the hour of 1 o'clock.
I got it on here too.
This is a special meeting of the Reapportionment Task Force called by the chair, Madam Chairman. She is unable to be here. I believe we've got a very important meeting with our insurance representatives. And so this purpose of this meeting, well, let's see, before we get into that, would you call the roll, please?
Ford,
Present.
Braz,
Here.
Gums, Kenyon, Martin, Sanchez, Strathman.
Shepro, here. All right,
Not here.
a quorum of the voting members is not present, but this meeting has been,
Excuse me. Lewis is here also on phone.
I'm sorry.
Lewis is with you on phone.
Thank you, Mrs. Lewis.
You're
Anybody-
welcome. And thank you for
anybody else?
singing.
Anita Lewis. Or is this a new version of what you're?
Oh, okay.
No.
Right, they're not voting members.
Thank you.
Uh,
Okay.
So the purpose of this is for really a workshop, and no votes are intended to be taken. So anybody who does not want to remain is free to leave, and anybody who remains, we've been asked to proceed. This happened actually with the Elgin meeting on so Wednesday?
Thursday.
Yesterday. It's just, by time flies when you're having fun. So for those persons present here and online, we thank you for being here. I think the intent was for the Aurora area board members and any interested parties to talk about, in particular, the issues relating to the mapping of the Aurora area district. So yesterday, we began with really Roger making some comments. Our legal counsel is here, I thought.
Yes.
He is.
Oh, there he is. And I may ask him to make some pertinent comments, but Roger, as Madam Chair said yesterday, this is your show. So
Yeah.
I know you found this an unbidden task, but the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon. So, we find ourselves having a meeting again about the Aurora and Elgin areas as it relates to the work that's been done for the county board districts, particularly in response to the voting rights districts and some of the communities and communities of interest and areas that are of concern to board members and districts. So to this point, Josina, Marita, the demographer, Phil, and Zach we've worked with them. They've done a lot of work to try and make districts that comply with the Voting Rights Act requirements or recommendations to try and create the Hispanic districts in a average population of 65%, but they're a range of about 63 to 69. And that's been one of the priorities, not the only priority. Another was to not pair board members against each other in redistricting to make sure that the incumbents are at least in their district. The other part of that is to deal with population and growth. We've had a couple of districts that have grown quite large compared to the others. And the balance of population is somewhere around 22,150. I think is 144 or something like that. But anyway, approximately 22,150. So average population, certain districts are going to be 65% approximately Hispanic for voting rights. And then keeping the incumbent in their district and not pairing them against somebody else. So those are kind of the guidelines. We did go through sessions where we asked everybody to give us feedback, and we tried to run those back through Josina. I specifically handed out a couple things. One is a map that was drawn, I believe, by some folks in Aurora, and with some help from the county clerk's office. We did have this reviewed by Josina, and I provided the larger handout, which was kind of her version of that. And Mr. Shepro, I think it's to your right.
Oh,
There's
this is Josina's.
That is Josina's work from the drawing that she had. And it's really showing her extended ACS 2015 to 2019 numbers for population based on the lines that she understood from this. Now, interpretation of the Aurora map that was suggested, yes. So we had her do that homework, and she came back with some things that she thought were, workable, and some other things that she thought changed the numbers maybe more drastically and made some of the voting rights districts a little bit either less or more Hispanic. So there were some issues with that. Again, we're in the stage where we're probably 3 or 4 weeks from having the actual data that you can do this. And then it's factual. It's what you have to work with. And it's not a guesstimate. It's not an estimate. That is the only number you can use, and that'll be what we'll have to deal with. So yesterday we did an exercise, and we worked with some of the people from Elgin to take something not unlike this colorized map that was provided and get a similar type of drawing set to give us shapes or polygons to put into a GIS map so that we can start understanding these areas that people are saying are the traditional or the appropriate boundaries that they think are necessary. So we can capture all of that. We have the map that was provided in this drawing. We have maps that were kind of marked up for Elgin. Tom Nikowski from GIS is here with us. Jason Veractor, did I say that right, Jason? Okay. Nicholas Kruger is online with us. We have 3 of the GIS people that have been doing this with the county for 20 years. I mean, they're probably some of the best in the state. No, it's not bragging on them, that's true. They're gonna be taking your drawings and putting them into our ESRI GIS system. We're gonna be we already have put Josina and the demographers maps into the system. And I think the challenge you have is to try and draw the best maps that you can based on the demographer and some of these feedback that we get. So we're going to be taking all of these shapes and putting them into the actual county GIS as a layer so we can look at them. And then when we get the census data, you'll be able to look at them pretty scientifically. There won't be any guesstimates anymore. And we can work with Phil and Josina to try and make adjustments on real numbers. And I think that's where we want to be. I have some maps that I want to share outside of these 2 maps that I wanted to show you some of the work that we're doing in GIS to give you an idea of how that works. But I think at this point, if anybody has any questions before we show you those, and if Phil wants to say anything also about the process. Phil's going to be consulting with us as we go through with our GIS team, drawing the shapes, and then making recommendations about if we move this street, what does that mean? How does that affect, the district? You obviously have street by street population and demographics will change. And if we move 100 people across one line to another district, we have to find another 100 people to replace them, especially if it's Hispanic population. It really affects the numbers within a district. It's not saying that you you can't change some of the lines. It's just, we have to figure out what the trade-offs are every time you move something, and there has to be a balance to it in order to maintain the percentages. I think there are some other commentary about which districts were the voting rights districts. And that's something that I wanted to kind of clarify today too, is, there were 6, I believe, districts that, was it 6 that were deemed as VRI districts, or 5? Five. And there was a question about which one was
5 in
the,
Aurora. I think that this map changed one of the
one of,
Section 2 districts to another district. So there still are 5, I
Yeah.
believe, but not four of them were the same.
it switched them. So
But,
we
you
we
know,
wanted to know, what other changes, or if this isn't a recommendation for Aurora, what would be that recommendation? And then today we had another conversation, which was, while we take the sketch art of the districts that the board members have recommended or that they've suggested, would they like to come in and work or sit with GIS to draw up their, maps? That way we get the lines on the street or on the parcel that they really intended. You just get it narrowed down. Now that doesn't change what we did with the demographer. We'll have to get the census data and we'll be pulling that into the map, and that's when we would try to reconcile. And that's what I would call it, is reconciliation between what we know as a valid map of the districts with the correct percentages and the correct population and the correct incumbents, versus what recommendations we can adopt and make the changes. And you reconcile those two things. We're hoping we can do that in a process of 2 or 3 weeks. So we'll try and take the difference between the two and come up with the reconciliation report, and you'll see what things go in and what things can't go in because of the population issues. And then we can have a meeting and talk about why.
there's a old aphorism that is something like, history repeats itself. And actually the second half of the quote is, first time is tragedy, second time is farce. But 10 years ago, I think we found ourselves at the end of the process in a very similar vein. And I think at that time, those who were around would remember that ultimately there was a similar meeting of the Aurora members that worked out something that was collectively acceptable to the group. And I think our hope is that this time history can repeat itself. Obviously, you all are the best judge of what your neighborhoods are and how that works. One thing that we learned yesterday, and I think we had learned for a while, that's my personal opinion, but I think it's shared by some others. We do a lot of talking about precincts being split. I suppose we talk about the precincts simply because right now they're the smallest unit that most of us are aware of that can be moved around the table. But the fact is, and I invite Roger or Phil to jump in if they think I'm not being accurate. Precincts, precincts have no standing under the Voting Rights Act. They are administrative boundaries to allow elections to be run. And so they focus on the number of registered voters in the precinct, not on the population. And as you look across the county, you will see tremendous variations between population and percentage of registered voters, depending on a lot of things, but usually involving ethnicity and racial background. And we, I think, have already concluded that we are going to have to divide precincts. And we aren't really going to do that till we've decided what the districts look like, so we can avoid having precincts cut, in half or in a third. And at this point, to try to do that ahead of the data and ahead of a final map seems to me to be just making us do the same work twice. And this time, as Roger has said, we are, 6 weeks away from having the real answers and not having to speculate. So I think yesterday, we kind of tried to get it away from a block by block, why is this precinct split? Which are not bad questions, but the timing, I think, needs to be deferred and look at larger issues. The Aurora folks and as well as Elgin have focused on the notion of splitting neighborhoods. So I think 10 years ago at the very end, Roger, we ended up doing what you're talking about, is people were literally, board members were sitting in the room and you and our great team could shift things around. You want to, okay, what does this look like? And 30 seconds later, you'd have a map showing it. And I think that was, so I remember that was the last big issue. And thanks to our staff, I think we were able to show people how these things would work out. So with that, I don't know, Phil, one thing that we talked about yesterday is because people talk about a lot of different factors. So it was, well, what was the demographer supposed to do? And I think we concluded there are some things that aren't flexible. You have to do them. There's some things that the statute or the law says you can do this, but they don't fall into the category of a mandatory requirement or deal with a protected class like minority rights. So when someone says, well, you split a neighborhood, neighborhoods are not a protected class under federal case law. They are the sort of things like jurisdictional boundaries or rivers or big streets that you can take into account, but you can't do that to the detriment of the requirements. And I think the top two and one doesn't overcome the other. I believe you have to meet both, and that's the population equivalent and the Voting Rights Act. And you can't say, well, it's a voting rights district, therefore it can be 25% less population. Hey, Phil, you want to add anything to that or put it in better terms?
No, I think you made it clear. There's two things that I'm kind of here to make sure you do, and that is make sure that we try and comply with the Voting Rights Act as well as stay within the equal population requirement of the Equal Protection Clause. So as I said a number of times yesterday to Elgin, this is your map, but for me to recommend it, we have to be in compliance with those two main things.
I have a question. Is this map is,
Your microphone?
sorry, Gums, sorry. This map is, have you, had a chance to review this and determine it's illegal within our
Okay.
parameters?
Can you look at the other map? Because
Yes.
that one, I think what Josina tried to do, and whether she did it correctly or not, I have no idea, but she took what she could to create the other one you have. And the concerns I have obviously with that one are just the major one is the population requirement. When you look at Josina's.
And if you can look at Josina's map, she incorrectly labeled 3 districts in Aurora. I don't know if that was intentional based on her data or if that was just a mistake. 1, 2, and 7 are incorrectly labeled.
Because 2 should be 1.
2 should be
Right.
1, 7 should be 1.
Well,
So
I'm
I'm
gonna-
not, I can't, I guess,
Oh, okay. So
If
I'm going to
Josina's
just use
not
the numbers
here-
on the chart because that's the only ones I can understand for now.
yeah, if
And I'll
Josina's
let
not
you
here.
figure
I'm
out which one's
sure.
yours.
this chart
Got everything
where it
wrong.
says District 1, that's not District
That's not
1.
District 1,
Yeah.
so if,
is really district.
I wondered about that because I
Okay.
thought,
So
wow,
this is
that was
a,
like a 60% drop.
so I'm concerned using this if Josina's not here to back up her data.
Well, let
I'll
me,
just go
okay,
ahead and
so
say
why
that.
don't you tell me what districts are wrong again, and I'll refer to them the right way.
2 should be
So
1.
just to be clear, we're dealing with something that was colored in with pencils
Yeah.
or whatever.
Right,
And-
but if you know Aurora, you know the district.
Yeah,
so
well, I'm
on
just
second
saying is
point-
that she's looking at 3 yellows. They were colored, all 3 of them were yellow, but
No,
I think
Yeah.
the real point though is
I'm just saying it's a
we
mistake.
gotta label
I
them
get it.
correctly.
Okay, can someone just give me the correct number?
Yeah,
7 should be 2,
Got that one? Okay.
and then.
2 should be 1
7 should be 2, 2 should be,
and 1 should be 7.
Okay. Okay.
repeat that one time. Amy.
1 should be 7,
7, okay,
7 should be 2, and 2 should be 1.
okay.
Okay.
She did ask about the coloring of that. She said she wasn't, I don't know if
Okay.
she was
Well,
confused or
let me-
sure, but yes, I do know that the numbers might have been transposed because she was looking at 3 yellow blocks and
Now-
we did ask her to do this and turn it around for one of the meetings. And I don't know that she had more than a day, but
I imagine, I'm going to extrapolate that that the numbers on the spreadsheet at the top are also wrong.
Well, no, they're
For the
not.
record, that's Ms. Bates.
May the spades.
No, I don't believe they
Thank you.
are.
they would represent the outline geography. So 8 would correspond to 8 at the top. This was done in a product called Maptitude. So Maptitude is applying the shape of 8, which is on the map below, and it's counting what's in that shape. So
Thank you. The numbers are going to be wrong.
The numbers would be swapped. That's
Yes.
all we're talking about. So if you look at, okay, I want to make sure
Yeah.
everybody, yeah.
So-
The underlying numbers, the percentages are right, but we have the wrong district numbers on the chart.
switch. the
That's a
districts.
big difference.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's
Okay.
obviously, I think Josina, when she was doing this, she was probably trying to do more proof of concept than she was
Yeah.
exact districts. Okay. So if we make those changes, and
Yeah.
I understand them now and I appreciate
Yeah.
it. The concerns I have are from a Hispanic standpoint, they're pretty close. And we could probably modify them in ways that would make them work from a Voting Rights Act standpoint.
So this is illegal.
No, let me
Okay.
finish. From a Voting Rights Act, it is close and could be tweaked to make it work. The problem you have is when you look at the percent deviation, which is the 4th column, I would consider it the 4th column
One,
on
two, three, four.
Josina's chart.
yep,
Okay.
Yeah.
We have a minus 18%. So that district, which is actually should be number 1, it's labeled 2, but should be 1,
yes,
is 4,000 people below the ideal population.
yes,
Okay. So that's 18% below.
yes.
Now you go to the next one, you got 13% below. And then the next one is 14% above.
Hmm.
So if you add the difference between what is properly 1 and 4, I have a 33% population deviation.
Yes.
Obviously, given what we've talked about, it can't be. Now,
It's not even a close question.
Yeah, but I guess I want to make sure that we're looking, unfortunately, the Aurora map wasn't exactly what Josina put into the spreadsheet. District 1 on the Aurora map has more population than the spreadsheet District 1. So I guess before we go even any further, I'd like to make sure that we are looking at the same population data as Josina. And I don't know where Josina is getting her population data. We got ours from the GIS.
okay, here's where Josina got hers. Josina got hers from Maptitude, which is based on the 2015 to 2019 5-year ACS estimate, which is what she used for all of the districts. Now, I will tell you, as far as, I don't think the data is correct. Okay, we've had that conversation a number of times. You've heard me say it. Is it as correct as probably as much as anything at this time from what we know? Now, we'll know for sure on August 16th, we'll get the data, and by August 23rd, I'll be able to tell you how correct it is. Maybe even sooner. But with the information she was using to draw the rest of the map, these shapes, now this is the actual population, the best population we know of for these shapes. Now, whether Josina drew these shapes the exact way you want them, I can't tell you, I'm not even sure Josina could tell you because she tried to do the best she could with.
It
what
looks
she
like she did a darn good job.
It was,
But not enough for my district or for your district.
so-
So
Yeah.
I would just say this, I'm going to put this aside right now because this isn't what Aurora wanted. So I'm
Well,
going to,
I guess what would help us, just so you know, and I think for Roger, so he
Sure.
can do it in the meantime, is where it is incorrect. If you could advise him what is incorrect.
yeah, and I
he
think
can
that's what we
then-
can do.
yeah.
He can then put that into his GIS system. So when we get the actual numbers, we'll have two things. One, we'll have the proper shape that you want. And two, we'll be able to analyze with real numbers what this deviation is. I will tell you that if these Hispanic percentages are correct, they're close, but I'm going to push you very hard to get those two at like 61% up to 63, 64. I will tell you that right now.
And we
Well,
still don't know
we're-
what our real data is, correct? Because we're looking at citizen voting age in order to create complete majority minority districts that actually have voting population.
Yes and no. Let me correct you a little bit.
And then the second part, before you correct me, is we understand that the Voting Rights Act requires us to have 50% majority Latino over voting age population, correct? It's 50%?
Why don't we let Mr.
Yeah, let me
Hams,
kind of
explain?
Yeah. It's a much more complicated issue than that. 50%, and if you are going to say 50%, you have to use 50% CVAP, citizens voting age population. We will not know on August 16th what the citizenship number is. The citizenship number will not come out on August 16th with the PL data. So we are estimating to the best we can based on prior history and based on court decisions when you don't have CVAP. CVAP normally comes out in about September or October. This year, I can't tell you when we're going to get CVAP, okay? There's been no announcement to my knowledge. My guess is you're not going to get CVAP before you have to pass a map. What we will have for you is voting age population.
Right.
So that total pop number of 63 to 6, that's 65 I'm trying to reach of total pop will probably turn into 60% of voting age pop. That will be what I would suggest will be your target. Doesn't mean everyone has to be at 60 exactly, but I would like you to get as close to that as possible to succeed against a possible challenge. Okay, and we'll have voting age in the census data.
So I'm sorry. I mean, I'm meaning harm, but we heard all this before.
Well, I'm just responding to the,
I understand that.
Okay, no, I'm just saying
So
because,
the question is,
yeah,
what are we here to do today? And when do we get time to do it? I mean,
well-
are we going to spend,
no, here's what I think we're asking you to do and Roger's asking you to do, is to look at this map that Josina did, tell us where you think she is wrong as far as the boundaries. If you do, Roger can then put those in your GIS system, and then when the real numbers come out, we can give you what those real numbers are. I was also asked the question, is this legal the way I see it today? I have a concern because of the population numbers. If these are not the right numbers, then we have to look at real numbers. But if you said to me, this is the map you want, I have major concerns as to population.
and I think the question was whether or not the Aurora proposed map was correct.
We have representatives of the county clerk's office that I believe looked at these numbers, and I would invite Brian, if you
Yes.
have anything you'd like to add to this that would help clarify it. I, for one, think that would be useful because obviously there are
Actually,
irreconcilable discrepancies between
Mr.
these two
Chaperone,
maps.
um,
Roger?
So, I think what Mr. Ford is asking for and Ms. Molina, the goal is to get a shape file or an outline of what you believe the districts are into our county GIS system so that we can actually look at real numbers. This was done between some people on this sheet and another version by Josina that was I think best effort. She tried. But if we get this into an actual shape on GIS base, if you tell us go off of this, we'll do our best to get this. And what I would show you, and I'll switch to it, but I'll show you how you can look at things through our GIS online version, but we can work from something like this and start making the final approach using the census data. And then there's no questions. It'll be absolutely what is or is not in the district.
Right.
But we just need to get that shape file down and in the system so we can start running those estimates. Every time we move the line, we'll recount and tell you how many people. And you say, hey, I just want to move it one street to the west. Tell me what that looks like. And we can sit with GIS and we can do that. I think that's where we want to be about the last week of August. We want to be in that mode where we have a general shape of every district that you all agree to. We'll pull all the numbers in and show you what they look like. We'll see all of our mistakes, all the things that are not correct. And again, we go back to how do you reconcile those down to the percentages that you need to have. And I think the only thing we're missing right now is it good enough to have this as a best effort drawing in GIS? We try to map this out. Maybe a couple, if you come over to GIS, that's what Mr. Tepe said. He wanted to come over and see the shapes drawn so he could look at it. We could do that. We could have one, you could have two of you at a time come in and sit with GIS to put these shapes in. We could do it as a best effort and you come over one at a time and look at it. It's fine with us. And we would just get it as close as possible before the census data comes in. And that's what we really want. So I'll switch and
Davis?
Is there a version of Josina's map that you could send us that we could expand to see the street names? Because she could be off just by one
Yeah.
street and change the population and we could correct that.
I can
pretty
ask
easily.
her for that. I don't have the shape file from that map.
I think what Roger is getting at is that I actually sat with Roger one time, and when you start to blow these maps up, the GIS mapping system, which is digital, and I believe has a actual, about 6-inch error, which is like nothing.
They're pretty tight. We do, I mean, these are the engineered drawings for parcels.
Right, and
It's down to the parcel line.
right, so it is down to the thickness of a pen, is what the accuracy is. So when you go to blow them up, it's better to see them on the screen than try to print it out, and because it becomes off a big scale.
It's really hard.
It's really hard. It's really hard to see.
So
that size.
Yeah.
this is a map
Yes.
that our GIS rendered for 2.3. This one's a little different than the one that we had been showing. This one's a little bit more interesting. So Mr. Ford, you'd asked about District 6 and some of the splits in this neighborhood, which is right here, right?
Right.
So as we zoom in on this, you'll see what he's talking about. This is his location and this is the neighborhood that we were talking about. And you'll see precinct 7 is split, or yeah, it's split right here, right? And then up here, let's see. Yeah.
Yeah. And I,
Well, as you zoom in, you can see better that this is split right here, okay? Between these two. So what you can do with this though, and this is the granular level that we're talking about. If you click on it in this map version, you'll actually see the split in the population split. This is from 2010 census data. This is what we used the last time we did this. So somebody drew a line between here and split a district, and we're just simply telling you from that precinct what's on each side of the split to that level. So when we get the new data and the new block level data, these are actually census block numbers in here. And we can tell you what the split is. We can tell you exactly who's on each side of the line. Right now, everything you're dealing with is kind of an estimate. It probably is not accurate, right? Unless everything stayed the same, or miraculously the net difference of all the changes was the same. That's very unlikely. But when you get that data and we have the shape, we can run reports like this and show you block for block who's in which side of the line. And if you want to spend the time and get into the detail of it, you can.
Yeah.
But we need to start somewhere, and that's those shape files in GIS.
Right.
And I think some of the reluctance or some of the challenges has been, if someone asks to see a line drawn somewhere and the response isn't that much detail, the question is, well, what numbers did you use? How did you come up with it? Well, this will answer that in a finite way. And I think that answer will be sometime the last week of August, first week of September. You'll know the numbers, and as you move a line, you'll know what that means. So we need to get the shape files into GIS, get them ready. We'll have Josina's maps in there already in her numbers. We had the requirements for the voting rights districts. We had the requirements for the total population, and then the pairing issue. And we have your recommendations. So that's what we would be working on sometime third week of August.
All right. So then right now, what we need to do is figure out what's the best way to get the shape files to you. And my suggestion is we sit down with you so we can actually see what it is we're looking at. I think that's exactly what Melina and Mavis is bringing up.
I would propose we try to draw this for you, and then you come in and just say, okay, zoom in. I want to tell you what street.
Right.
And then we have GIS move it to get it ready for you. And
We can
that's
change the
fine.
colors if you want. We can remove.
Yeah,
the
we
color
can do
from
that
there.
dynamically any way you want. We can number it however you want. But I assume the other thing that you'll see and that Tom's group from GIS can do is if you're curious about some other district where the lines are, we maintain the districts for everything. So they can show you where the school district, the park district, anything that taxes somebody, we have a district boundary for in Kane. So we have all of those, roads, highways, so whatever you want to look at, you could turn on and look at and identify. But we got to start somewhere.
Right, and I think we're all in agreement that Aurora wanted to start not with what was proposed in versions 1, 2, or 3, which was the same, but Aurora's requesting that this is where we start.
Okay.
So I think, I'm not speaking for everybody in Aurora, but I have 4 members here. If anybody's not in agreement with that, I mean, this is what Aurora's request is, and then we can move on from there.
Anita's on.
Silva is in agreement.
Monica's on too. Yeah.
Oh, Monica, good.
So then we just need to set up the time to meet with
Yeah.
you and GIS to get that base core. And we understand there may be voice in between, and that's where the population and the percentages get cleaned up.
Yeah, before that meeting, I would recommend that Tom and his team draw this. We just try to draw it to
Right, no, I
start.
understand that, understand.
Yeah,
that.
we'll draw what Josina and what, we'll draw this basically, which is what Josina tried to do too.
Yeah.
But we'll draw it, we'll put it in there, and then you would come in and make the adjustments to it to make it final, kind of.
Because our goal
That's what Mr. Tepe was
is
going
to
to do.
is to meet all the requirements. We want the same goal.
Okay.
I will say Aurora population, I mean, where have we increased in population at? There's no subdivision that's been created or no major, we have a house that pops up here and there. What may change in the different neighborhoods, or you want to call them precincts, the percentage of one ethnic makeup to the other may have changed.
Sure.
And I know here, what's clear is when you tried to do this the first time with this map, and I don't have a color, but you were,
Color?
yeah, it doesn't matter, but they know what I'm talking about. The
Okay.
numbers on the population you had are all within the deviation, it appears to me, just looking at the numbers, okay? Or pretty darn close.
Actually, I was not a part of that.
Well,
map
whoever,
being
I'm
done, but-
looking globally, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
so I know that the group was trying to hit the population numbers. There's no doubt about it, okay? And whether the data is different, who's right, who's wrong, the data we're gonna know. The other thing that goes to what Mr. Ford said though, and I talked about it a little bit yesterday, is the areas that you think, and you may be correct, and this map from Josina may be wrong as to population, especially as it relates to heavily Latino districts. Because as we're seeing, when you look at the existing districts, the 2 districts that are the most heavily Latino districts are also the 2 that are showing up with the greatest number below the ideal from, okay, why is that? That is because, Latinos have historically not filled out the ACS like African Americans or whites. So we're probably looking at possibly the numbers on the Latinos are actually much higher than Josina is printing out, which also changes the population number. But until we see that, I was just asked the question, given the numbers I have in front of me, do I think this is a legal map? I can't say it is. The numbers may be wrong and it may be perfectly legal. I just can't say with the numbers I
Right.
have.
And we understand that. We clearly understand that.
Okay, I didn't want anybody to think that I
No,
thought
no,
this
no,
was a
no.
bad
And,
map.
and we don't want anybody to think that we don't want to meet the requirements because we definitely do. Right.
And we all keep saying real numbers, so I guess we don't need to meet next week or the week after that, so you guys.
We need to meet when the real numbers come in.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that, we'll get this into GIS, because this is what Aurora wants.
Right.
And then when you guys are, then after we get the numbers, then we can.
So I think what Roger is saying though is the core of what we want to see can be done after the GIS is done. And then when the numbers come in.
Well, what I would do is I would put your shapes in according to the roads and boundaries. And we generally use precinct and parcel boundaries. Don't cut a house in half, kind of thing. So follow the logical boundaries that you would have on here, and you can help us adjust that. We'll be done and have the shapes ready. We can run 2010 or old, like this different census and data estimates against it. That doesn't take a lot of effort to show you what the estimates look like. But preferably we just sit on those shape files until we get the census data and we pull that in. First shot in, I'm going to tell you, it's probably going to not be exactly what you want or think. It'll probably be what none of us thought. It'll be off here and there. So I would just ask that, you at least concede the point that you're going to have to move some streets and lines, to balance.
That's fine.
But once we get that, then it's, moving those lines. You're talking about, you might be moving a street or a block at a time.
That's fine. You can,
And-
we understand
Roger,
that.
can I
Okay.
ask you a question? You
Yeah.
have the 2020 census geography though, correct, in your system? So you can
Yeah.
draw with that because you don't want to draw with 2010 because then you're going to have to reconvert it.
We can do whatever's required.
Well, I guess I would just suggest, and my suggestion is at least draw with 2020, then your conversion will be much easier when you get actual census because you don't want to convert 2010 again.
Well, I don't understand that.
Sorry, let me. So when we talk geography, I'm not
It's the
talking,
same
I'm not
blank
talking-
ground.
I'm not talking streets, okay? I'm not talking homes.
Okay.
So the only way to draw a map is by using, and see, it gets confusing because we'll use the word block. A block is not how you think of a block. Okay, a block is not Main Street from A to B.
Mhm.
A block is what the Census Bureau tells us is a block. Some blocks in the city are very small because they have an average population of, let's say, 400 people in each block, okay? In your western part of the county, that block may be a township. Not really a township, but it's going to be different size. So we're not talking city blocks like we think of blocks.
Different kind.
Okay, so what you have here, and I don't know if we can, can you zoom in on like Josina on that map right there?
Yeah.
To get to the pack where we can see blocks or not really?
Not blocks, no. You're not going to see blocks. It's going to go precincts. We didn't put blocks. We
Okay.
can though.
So when we draw with the census data,
Yeah.
okay, there will be, when you get really close, when we say blocks, we're going to say a group of like 300-400 people, depending on maybe 100, maybe 400 people that live in a particular area. You may not be able to go by exact streets in a particular area because it's how the census sets it up. We can't change the way the census. So
Mhm.
every 10 years, the census goes and changes what I call the geography.
Okay,
So what may be a block or a block group in 2010
good. Okay.
is not going to be the same, is 90 to 95% of them will be the same, okay? But they change, they go through a whole process. In 2018, they come out with what we call new blocks or new geography.
So is
it will-
that by population?
it's a little bit by population. It's a little bit by what the cities or areas may ask for. Honestly, it's kind of Greek to me, so I'm not going to tell you why, but they do that every 10 years. So they last came out with new geography in 2018 and then say that is the geography we're going to use for the 2020 census. So
Okay.
those are the blocks we're using, the tracks, the block groups, as we've talked about in the past.
Mhm.
So just want you to be aware when you say to Roger, hey, move this over to another block and a street, that may not work because that's not how the geography's set up. It may be you have to go 2 streets. You may have to, or in some cases, you may only have to
But
go
we
half a
can
street.
cut blocks into
Cannot
pieces.
cut blocks. The reason you can't cut blocks is because we no longer know how many people live in that block if you cut it in half.
I think what he's saying is we should be working a lot with the percentage of the makeup of those areas. So when those areas, what you call a block, is already defined of what's in that area. If you break it up, you don't know exactly what you're breaking up.
Correct. And I can't write you a legal description, or Roger can't write you a description of the map that says you saw that list Roger had earlier, blocks in each,
Yeah,
that chart you had, Roger?
this shows you the block numbers. These will change a little bit.
But the point is, that's how you write your legislation or how you'll write your resolution. District 1 includes the following, those blocks right there. Okay, and if you see those blocks, they range from 0 people in some of them to 150 in some. That's what the Census Bureau does. We don't have a choice to break those. Now, they're pretty small numbers, so they won't change a ton, but you just have to, I just want you to be aware, and I guess I could have waited till we all tried to draw together, but I wanted you to know.
This is an important point that I never understood.
Even, I would even say now, even, looking at the estimates, we certainly,
Every street, you can chop by
it depends on, yeah, we may have to adjust some lines to go over a street just to make it accurate.
But the blocks are set by the census.
Yes. So like if you draw a line right now and we're splitting something, we might have to move the line to get it out of the middle, just to put it around the block. Yeah.
And so it almost sounds like one block this way or one block that way could be too high a deviation or too low a deviation, and then you're stuck in the middle.
No, the reality of it is, the upside is, these blocks are so small
Okay.
that one block moving one to the other is not going to change. Now, if you change, this map looked like it was tried to be drawn by precincts, which is really hard to do because those precincts, some of your precincts are huge, some are small, right? But blocks, as you see, your total number, the biggest block in that group right there that Roger's showing you, I think is 150 something. If okay, my eyesight's not that good. So, but changing 150 people from one group to the next is not, that deviation is like 0.5% or 0.2%. I don't know what it is. I could do the math, but it's pretty darn small.
Not even.
Okay.
So you can change a block here and there. Just know that they may not completely line with what you think are streets. They may be the other side of the street. They may be,
Railroad tracks in my neighborhood.
a lot of them, I will say, you will find that most of the blocks do usually comply with railroad tracks.
For,
They usually do not cross railroad tracks for a heavy part.
So
Usually not.
railroad tracks.
yeah,
A lot of the diagonals I see here are probably railroad tracks.
for, just for reference, the folks in GIS that you have done this 2 or 3 times
Yes. Thank you.
over. They're very well versed in how to
Yeah.
work with the blocks in
Mhm.
GIS. So I don't have any reservations about that. I just think that, out of sake of everybody's time, I don't know that you're going to have much more, to negotiate other than getting this in there and starting to
Right.
look at it
So-
in the GIS.
So for the sake of time,
Yes.
our next 2 steps is GIS taking the map and putting it in their system. That's one, right?
Yes.
So after that is completed, which we don't know, I don't know if you can tell us now when, the next step is for us to sit down with you either hopefully in groups of 2s and,
Fine tune.
right.
Yeah.
So the question is, can we select a week now of when that time period should take
Oh.
place?
Mr. Teppi's coming in next week, and sometime in the next 2 weeks, we'd like to try and get this into shapes. And if you have the availability, I'm telling Tom Nikowski to schedule that with people, because if I'm not available, that doesn't matter. He can draw the lines.
You come in by yourself or?
So,
That they're
but
separate issues related to the Elgin area.
yeah, I would just, yeah, I would just schedule it with Tom. I mean, it's,
Okay.
yeah. So once Tom gets this base map in or starts getting it into kind of a place where you could come in and see it, then you come in, schedule time with him, and
Yeah.
they can have a staff person sit with you and move some of the lines that you need.
The interim step, though, is going to be is that then all of you need to at least agree that the map that is produced is accurate, what you thought this other one depicted.
Can I also ask a question of the people who
Yeah.
are involved? My guess is, and Roger, tell me if I'm wrong, that if Josina's map is close as far as the shapes, that will make Roger's job a lot easier because that's already in a format he can just download instead of starting from scratch on the one that's hand colored. So I think that would help Roger from my standpoint.
If I were doing that, I'd actually go back to the 2010 map and just start from there because that's pretty close to what they, I
Yep.
mean, it's closer. At least that's what I saw in there. So this is version 2.3 from the last version that
No,
Justina
I'm
worked
talking
on.
about,
I know.
this one
Well,
she-
and I'm saying so that's what she's looking at. And I'm saying that this is actually 2010, which is closer to what this is. I mean, it's maybe a little different, but
I'm not really seeing it, sorry.
It is closer.
yeah.
It just shifted a lot of things to take into account the,
Yeah. By closer, I'm specifically talking about
The
District
shape,
7 over
yeah.
here. It goes up that eastern side. This one here, District
Is-
7 with, that's Monica's?
Mhm.
Does this map divide any existing precincts?
Oh, yeah, I think.
I think they're all gonna divide
Well, okay,
precincts.
so even the
Well,
revised one.
Not as many, I don't think.
All
Maybe
right.
none, I don't know.
Yeah, I think Josina, when she was doing it, just talking to her, looked at what looked like the precinct, these numbers, and tried to, and just pretty much drew by precinct because I don't know that she could tell any more than that when she drew. So that's, I think that's where she started was here's the VTDs or the precincts. Tried to draw those. And if the precincts are split in any way by your proposed map, I think she would tell you she was wrong because she just pretty much could really only tell precincts for the most part by what she saw.
Would it be helpful if each of you looked at her map of your district and said what you think is not drawn correctly?
I don't think everybody's getting what Roger's saying, what
Yeah, I
he
think
can
that-
do. I think,
Yeah.
I think we're right now, that's all set aside.
Okay, well,
When-
that, right,
when a-
yes, if you do that approach, then you're really not looking at this anymore. You're starting with a whole new concept.
Not really. It's just a matter of having a base to work with. And we'll work within these boundaries of what we have in front of us. And because Georgina's map versus the map we have are so close, I think those boundaries that we're trying to work within are pretty much the same.
Yeah, the only difference with this Josina map, other than the label being wrong, was between 2 and 4. My population is greater in the Aurora proposed map than in
Right.
her map. So the negative 18% deviation, that's why it's incorrect. So,
Yeah.
but Roger, I completely
fine.
agree with Roger. I'd want him to take the lead and help us put it together, use the shape.
Another
And then we'll meet.
tool that Mr. Lutkins mentioned yesterday that we didn't talk about is once we draw these, another way that we can look at this is in another layer, we can pull up what is essentially a heat map of the Hispanic population. So you can actually see the district that you proposed and you can say, we're short a couple percentage points. Where are those people? And it'll show you like a darker red for Hispanic, population. And we can say, okay, we need to get something from that area. So you don't have to do it blindly. I mean, we can use intelligence and say, this area has the Hispanic population in it. So in order to get the correct percentage, we do need to create a border that goes maybe to include that into an area. And that will help you with, complying with your VRA districts, but you're not doing it at, kind of guessing. That is where they're at. If you want to encircle them into that district, we know. So there's very little guessing at that point. You're just trying to draw lines around data that you know.
Didn't you
I like
already,
that.
didn't you already do a map that showed some of that information?
Yes, Nick showed a heat map last time from, it was using, I believe, it was either ACS or Esri enhanced data. But for the purposes of identifying where the population is, either one of those sources would be very good to use, because you would then draw the line in the GIS using the census data, and you would get the population. You're just using it kind of to see in the dark, you know, where do I go to get the right population? Then you would draw the line and count it. So I think some of those tools, when you're looking at it, will help you. When we say we're off by 2 or 3% or something, where do I get it? Where's the adjoining population that makes that happen?
Right.
I'm going to go grab that and do it. And hopefully that gives you what would be maybe a more compact district and stops some of the, you know, fingers that roll through, you know, different areas. You try to grab the most compact area to get the population. And I know Josina was doing that. She was trying to do that in the drafts that she did. So some of that's the pain you feel when you see the district and it kind of sprawls and goes and grabs population, because she's looking at those numbers and trying to get them up to, you know, 65% or whatever. So
Is there a consensus then to follow Roger's?
Yes.
I moved to consensus.
Yes.
Okay, and.
We can start next
I
week.
know we're not voting. That's why I
Yeah.
said it.
And Roger, so the timing on that, you think would be what?
I think we would want to schedule next week, I'll talk with Tom, and we'll reach out to this group of Aurora board members and ask them, you know, what days are available to come in. And then once we get the initial draft from GIS, we'll invite them in twos to come in. And it'd be nice if you came in kind of one after the other during the day, so we can kind of encapsulate it in a session of a day. But if it happened over a couple days, that's what has to happen, because your schedules.
Could you like pick a day when you're ready and then
Yeah.
give us?
Yeah, once we get the initial base map in, we'll call and tell you. And we could we could send you a link to the, you know, or a copy of the new version. And you could look at it on your own time before you come in. It's not like we have to have a pop quiz and you come in and say, here it is, you know, tell us what you think. We'll show it to you in advance.
The only constraint, which you alluded to, is it can't be more than 2 of you at a time if you are voting members of this group.
And
But be safe overall, you just stick
yes,
with 2.
and the only other thing I would say is that we probably would want, at some point, we'll have to, I don't know, Phil, if you're available or not, but if you wanted to join us by Zoom or something, we could even try that, or.
I will definitely try and make it. I can swing
Okay.
by, especially if you're doing back to back to back, you know, if we're spending an afternoon
Yeah.
or one day. I would, as long as I'm available, I'll make myself available.
Okay, good.
But
You know, if we do that, then we don't have to notice
yeah,
special meeting. But if it's convenient to have more, it's not that difficult to, you know, we don't seem to be overwhelmed with. the
yeah, my
current
only concern would be I'd want to do this in GIS where all their computers are,
Right.
because I will tell you, my laptop and the computers in here would struggle to do this.
Yeah, it's a hard.
And also,
Yeah.
all of these are still preliminary drafts. So.
You guys would have to upgrade my laptop.
Yeah, you
And
know,
my suggestion would be is that the consensus of this meeting is to do, as Roger's outlined, I think that can be worked out directly between you and Roger. And I don't think we need to set another meeting here until you've reported back that you're ready
Yep.
for that.
I agree 100%.
If there's no,
Mr. Chairman, this is Alan.
yes,
Thank you. I just have a general question. Roger, you referred to a map that has the Hispanic population shown, and you used it in this context. If you needed to add another % of population, you could reach out and you would know
Sure.
where. Can you tell me the name of that map? I just didn't recognize it.
It is actually a map that's put together by Esri. It's their ArcGIS mapping, and we pulled that information in to our GIS map base for Hispanic population. So if I look at ArcGIS,
I thought you called it a MEP map.
HEAT, HEAT. It's like where the hot zones are for
Oh,
populations.
okay, a heat map.
Yeah,
All right. So if we
That
refer
isn't-
to that with you, you'll know what we're talking about.
yeah.
That isn't a map that you've put online at this point, Roger.
No, that's
No,
fine.
it's
I
a
just-
map that that ArcGIS puts together for Hispanic population. It's just to give you an idea of where people live, and this is kind of what it looks like. So this is, you know,
It's just a layer on the map that you already
yeah.
have.
So it's showing you these
Exactly.
concentrations. So they make one of these for all, you know, all over North America, actually all over the world. And we would just simply layer this into the map so you could actually see where you have, you know, Hispanic population. And it shows you that. And you can zoom in and you can get kind of granular with it. And you can see but we're not saying this is what you would use as the basis of the map. It's just a reference point. So you know where the populations are at. If you need to balance some things out, you know where the Hispanic population is in that area. And you might want to go
Exactly.
grab some of those and pull them into a district to make it 65%.
Yep.
But we're not
That's
guessing,
perfect.
hey, let's try this street. Let's try this street and see if it works. We would go find one that has the right population and add it.
Or ask them to all move.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There are some tools that actually do that in a more automated way too.
Please use your microphone if you're going to comment
Yeah.
for posterity.
Okay.
Before we finish, I note that, and I want to thank some of our non-voting members for taking the trouble to be here today. And I just would ask if any of them have any comments, wanted to weigh in. Ms. Pedersen?
No, I was listening in and out of Zoom court, so I heard everything that was occurring and read it in place.
And Mr. Gately?
Yes, so I just want to see peace in the valley and no lawsuits. So whatever the decisions are of the group, we just want to make sure that, you know, we comply with all the rules, what the attorney was talking about, and I want everybody to be happy, of course. That's where I'm at.
Okay, anybody else? Anybody online that would like to comment?
Mr. Chairman Fraz,
Yes, Mr. Fraz.
I just want to congratulate everybody. I was kind of the silent observer today because I'm not from Aurora, but great progress and very calm debate and a lot of progress. So congratulations.
About half the time as yesterday.
Exactly.
We learned from yesterday. So.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I want to say that I think this process is moving pretty well.
thank you, Ms. Bates. We have some visitors from the clerk's office. Anything you'd like to add before we conclude today's proceedings? All right, I'm seeing shaking heads. If there's no other comments or
Hey, Mr.
business.
Chairman,
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, yeah, Louis on the line.
yes.
I just had one quick question. Is there an advantage to like my boundaries go, I'm District 3 in Aurora, and District 8 is like the one that I will probably be playing with most. So would it be helpful if like Rochelle and I come in at the same time? I mean, is there an advantage to doing that maybe?
I would leave that to your collective wisdom to decide which of the animals are going to go 2 by 2 into the ark.
I'll call you. I'll call you, Ms.
I love it. I love it. Awesome.
I will say by my experience that if you can do people who have common boundaries, it will make it easier.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
That
We'll get
would
in touch
help.
with each other, so.
And I would guess if you have to have the same person come in a couple of times,
Okay.
that might also work, but that's micromanaging to the
So-
point. But, you know, it's a good point to make. You
In,
don't want to go in there with me.
I would say, once you get started, you can it's almost like trying to work on something at home. you don't understand it till you get started. And then once you get started, you understand more about it.
Right.
So at this point, all we need to do is just get started and
Right.
things will come clearer.
Mr. Ford, I think you're correct. And it may be as you go in, you'll say, you know, we need to bring so-and-so in now. You know, I'll leave and you come in and you guys talk. I think it's a very informal process. And again, I think you'll find that Roger and the IT people can turn around some of these ideas very quickly. So it's not like, okay, you have to sit. Raymond.
I have just one question.
Raymond Esquivel from the county.
I'm the Director of Elections. So I've been here 20 years and I dealt with all this redistricting too. But I see some lines here that,
Not in this is something else. Yeah.
the lines, are you guys gonna fix these lines? Or, like, there's some crooked lines that don't even go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, Roger? If you would bring something up like,
Sure. Yeah, I can do that.
Can I answer that
for you.
question?
I know.
I want clean lines too for the county and stuff.
You don't want to have to do a lot of meets and bounds.
Well,
and-
for us too, it's a lot of ballot styles.
Yeah.
You don't want ballot styles, a lot of ballot styles.
What's that word? A lot of.
Ballot styles.
Balance.
Yeah.
Balance tiles.
The
Ballot
point being is
styles,
that
yeah.
eventually, we can't just adopt a pretty picture. We have to either ourselves or with the county clerk's office, have to create legal descriptions of all these lines.
I just want to show you an example because it's like, it has to be a little bit more cleaner than.
I'll show them one example of a line, but
I think the answer to that is that will come at the end of the process when we have general agreement. And I would think at that point, then the surveyors, legal description writers, whatever would take over. And if there need to be adjustments to avoid what you're concerned about.
Like in Sugar Grove or even there, in Sugar Grove, there's a line going from, I don't know if it's a highway or a tollway, and it goes, you have to make
Oh, I
the
think you
lines
just went
a
past
little,
it. Yeah,
like,
right there.
Yeah.
so
I think that's the tollway, isn't it? The one that goes across. Sugar
this is the
Grove.
toll. This is 88 running through here.
It's 88.
That's.
there's some lines, Roger, we talked about it.
Sure. This area was kind of a mess.
I think there was one up in Dundee that looked like it just was drawn
Yeah.
freehand.
I will tell you that there are what I call artifacts that we've found,
Right there, in Canton. If you go right there on 15, you see that one right there. If you go zoom more, right there on the right. What is that? Right down there, you go curve.
But what you're dealing with is you cannot escape having all the geography in a shape because it has to, you had to occupy the entire county. So that space has to be in something, and it's just drawn into that.
But if you take 2010,
yeah, yes, I know.
all the lines that GIS work with the county board, those lines are a little bit more better than this lines. I'm just giving an opinion that for us in election in King County, and for you guys too, look at that.
This isn't the 2.3 map we're looking at.
Yeah, there, like I said, there are artifacts that show up like this little dot and this little dot. And we're talking with Josina about that. And we're like, well, as we get closer, we'll clean up everything that we find. So in this one, she cleaned up one of them. There's still one of the remnants. So this dot was part of drawing something, and it's still out there. So, we're like, okay, well, we'll have to clean that up before we finalize anything. But there's little lines that are drawn, and as you're marking up stuff, but we'll work on that as we get closer, I don't think that there's anything we can do about that until we get the final.
And
I
most
think
of those
eventually, I
areas,
think
most of those
that's
areas have no population.
Yeah.
Because if it has population, it's showing up on the system as you're missing somebody.
Right.
Yeah.
So like that area right there, 99%.
But you
sure
got to
has no
remember,
people.
we have to move all these people, these voters
Right.
to where they're supposed to vote. So I'm just giving my opinion.
That'll be
of-
cleaned
Of
up.
my experience, so.
Raymond,
Yeah,
I would
it's just an
assume that
artifact
that
from
would be,
drawing something. I don't know.
that would
It's just
be
something
near
she
the
missed.
end
It's
of
a
the
block. She
process when we
dropped
have
it.
to address issues like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree, it has to be looked at, but
So,
I think
all right.
until we get
Yeah.
the broad agreement on it, it's premature to start looking at that level of detail.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else? All right, well, I want to thank those members of the task force that were directly involved with Aurora, who took the time to be here today, and our community members as well, and all of you for being here. And if there's nothing further, we didn't really officially
pulled it off
convene,
there.
so we didn't have a quorum, but nevertheless, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll do it. Motion
Mr.
to
Ford
adjourn.
moves, second by
Gums.
Fraz. Will add, okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Thank you very much. We are adjourned or in recess at